So, greetings and salutations. This is a redo of the episode 7 of the Ring of the Fellowship Protection. Um, we are going to, just kind of respond to things like different game philosophies and stuff like that. I've seen the Shadow Dark stuff. I've been watching Retro DM Ray's material on the new Shadow Dark RPG. We'll probably get it whenever I get a chance, get have a little bit of money to waste on it. But excuse me, seeing some of the aesthetics of it, pretty on board with it. Got this weird Yogg-Sothoth looking thing, a Shoggoth looking thing, and I'm a sucker for that kind of look. Then you also have like a mixing of modern philosophy with old school philosophy, which is good. I've tried and failed on that point several times because certain rule sets are like married to like really complicated things, whereas certain rule sets are not. And now I will flatten you out, you little butt. I'm gonna pinch you. I'm gonna pinch you. Anyways, and then of course I was watching. In addition to watching Retro DM Ray, I was also watching Adventures with Dice, which is the new name for the channel of Rob from Rob's Game Group, and he was talking about how it's kind of an older video. Like I think it's at least 1 year old, and he was talking about how we really don't need any more fantasy settings for these OSR games, and I tend to agree. I think we have a glut for it, and I'm going to use a real life analogy for that, and that is that you typically have. So, like, let's take for example, all three of us, Ray, Rob, and me, we're all Christians, and to use a real life thing, Ray, a month or two back, asked what my opinion was on King James onlyism, and I gave my opinion. I'm not one. Number one, even though I do use the King James, actually, from my theft money that I got, which is what I call my tax returns, I got this, which is very nice. Let me pull it out here. It's without a shadow of a doubt my favorite. I'm not normally a study Bible guy, but zipper cover, and like inside you have like classical Protestant creeds and confessions and stuff like that. And it's actually the Reformed Heritage Bible by Joel Beakey. So like if you're a Calvinist like I am, you'll like it. So it's very nice. Didn't cost me too much. Anyways, so to use an analogy, a real life analogy, not a King James onlyist. Even though I use King James for church in my personal Bible reading, to give you an idea. To use a real world analogy of why we don't need any more fantasy settings for our OSR games, we'll use Bible translations as one. So something about the King James. King James was at the tail end of a line of English translations. Probably about half a dozen, a little bit more, I think. You had Bishop's Great Bible, Tyndale's stuff, which became the Matthews. You had Catholic Douay-Rheims. You had the Geneva. Of course, you had the Geneva. So it was that was at the tail end of like quite a few English translations. At the same time, there was actually several decades like at least 2 decades, usually separating one translation from to the next. Um, so, and after that, there was really nothing really drastic about English translations until America, because you had guys like Thomas Jefferson and um, John Wesley making their own additions and revisions, but they were basically based on the King James. They were just kind of updating it then, and then like it really did, and like even when you had like the discovery of Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus and the the manuscripts from the Dead Sea and stuff like that. Um, Even then, you didn't have that. You didn't see this big boom of translations, right? That's just to say, just as an aside, did have a major English translation come out. What was it called? Was it the American Standard? Is that what it's called? No, the revised version. The revised version of the 1800s. I can't remember what year exactly. So, but point being, it'd be about midway through the 20th century whenever we see this big boom in translations. You had the NIV, and then you'd have the NKJV came out in 1989. You had like the NASB, which had two different revisions. You have the 77 and the 95. You also have the ESV and the NLT from Tyndale House. NASB was from Lockman Foundation. Thomas Nelson owns the NKJV. Zondervan owns the NIV. Crossway owns the ESV. And Holman got into the market. And originally, the Holman Christian Standard Bible was supposed to be based on the majority text, the I can't remember which. It was the one that Art Farstad worked with. Anyways, Farstad wanted the Holman Christian Standard to reflect the majority text, the Byzantine text position. And so the Holman Christian Standard was supposed to be a version of that. Well, when Farstad died, they changed that to let's make it another critical text one. And so you have another critical text one. And of course it didn't sell well. They even had a gimmick with it where like it translated Lord as Yahweh in every instance. And it was so gimmicky and it sold poorly, which is a shame because the study Bible was actually very excellent. If you were going to get a Holman, you want the Holman Christian Standard Study Bible. But it didn't sell well, so they discontinued it. And then they started printing just the simple Christian Standard Bible because they felt that sold better because it had a new name to it. And of course, it was literally just the same thing, just with Yahweh taken out, that gimmick taken out. So it's basically just an NIV, what they call optimal equivalence, which tends not to sell well because people who are looking for Bibles are looking for either a formal or a dynamic equivalent, not both. Even though both kind of use the opposite end to translate what they want it to say, essentially. And really the only reason we have that many in the English language is because of money. Because it turns out that most of these other companies that print them also print Christian books in general. They hold the rights to them. And so if you're a Christian book publisher and you want to have Bible verses in your books, your choices are either the King James Version, which in America has no copyright claim and is open to the domain of people to print freely if they wish. Or you can pay to use the rights to a translation from a rival publishing house. Like if Zondervan wanted to use the NKJV, or Thomas Nelson wanted to use the NIV, they'd have to send each other checks for it. So what's your answer to it? Publish your own. So that's really the real reason behind it. We have a glut for it. We don't need any more English translations. It makes sense for every 100 years because language changes like that. But it's terrible when you have 20 or 30 years. Like, okay, I was born in 1989, same year that the NKJV came out. English did not change that much to warrant the amount of translations that came out since I've been born. Now, I can understand the NKJV, obviously, because I prefer the text behind the KJV and NKJV. So, and I love the Geneva as well. Same text family, based on the Stephanus text of Theodore Beza, the Textus Receptus. I understand NLT, for example. NLT was a kind of lean more into the paraphrasy kind of end of it, but it not so paraphrasing like the Living Bible, which is where it came from. It was more literal than the Living Bible, which is terrible and awful, and I don't recommend it. I can understand the NIV. I can understand the NASB. That's about it. I don't even understand the ESV. And that makes a lot of Calvinists mad, because I think that they translate Genesis 3 very badly, because the ESV's reading of Genesis 3 is unique from every other English translation that's come out. And that's a problem. When you're in the minority like that, that's a problem. So I don't like it. But I can understand all these other translations coming from these other families. But we don't need that many. And we don't need any more. So we should focus our efforts on translating into foreign languages and giving the gospel that way. But anyways, to get back to the role-playing games. So we have a glut of fantasy setting role-playing games. I already have basic fantasy. I don't need another iteration of it. I would love to have a basic fantasy version of a sci-fi adventure or space adventure. Essentially the same thing, space adventure, but not necessarily the same thing. A Western, Call of Cthulhu clone. Be cool with that. See, so we don't need any more fantasy setting OSR games. We really don't, because literally at this point, the only reason why they keep doing it is because it's got a new gimmick behind it, which Shadow Dark looks cool, and I'm going to get it. Now, whether or not I'll actually be running it, I don't know. I hope to run it eventually, but by and large, I'm going to stick with the game that I've been running for a year now, which is basic. So, because it's good enough for me. What else can I say about this? Not much, I'm afraid. Those of you that follow my channel will probably know that I'm a little bit opinionated on certain things, but it seems that thankfully drama in the D&D world has been down. I found an article earlier though, so that I could have something to talk about. It's from Game Rant. so you know it's going to be good. Dungeons and Dragons 12 tips for first time players, and we're going to go through it. And I can already tell you, didn't have a whole lot of hope. So I'm going to try to hit on the main points. And of course, one of the pictures, of course, is Critical Role, which is me. You know, I don't like. If you haven't liked Critical Role, good for you. Not a fan. So, anyways, number 12, choose the right people to play with. As a first time player, it helps to have a mixture of experience and new players at the table. Right. Obviously, old timers' knowledge can help speed the process of learning D&D's somewhat dense and complex systems. Well, now this depends on what edition you're playing. If you're playing like basic, it's easier to grab a hold of the rules. Now, I've never played advanced, so I can't speak to that. Even though I have PDF, I've barely cracked it because I just don't. As cool as it is, I don't see myself running it. You know what I mean? Like, I run basic because it's easy and to run and learn. But yeah, having an experienced player definitely helps. Meanwhile, having one or two other new players at the table helps avoid the feeling of being on the spot. Well, yeah, like it's less intimidating if you know that you're not the only new person. So I would say that. But I think if like you're running a campaign that's been going for a while and you happen to have a new person come in, you just happen to like break the ice. And like, hey, I understand you're new. This game has been running for X amount of times. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll try to fill you in. We'll try to explain things. Unfortunately, many gaming communities, including those surrounding tabletop RPGs, have their share of elitists or gatekeepers. Yeah, and that goes on both sides of the political spectrum, not just one group. So, I'll admit to that. There's a lot of gatekeeping over on the right, but there's also a lot of gatekeeping over on the left. Both are I don't think gatekeeping is a terrible idea because I don't play with people I don't like. I don't play with people that I don't have common ground with. Why would I want to put myself through that and put myself through the headache and the arguments and Makes no sense. Unfortunately, many gaming. I already read that part. Avoid joining campaigns with players who share these attitudes, which can be discouraging and ultimately make the game less fun. New players, especially shyer gamers, should find a party of friends who make them feel at ease as they get into character, make mistakes, and learn the ropes. Learning the game together can ultimately be a fun bonding experience, and that is true. I will grant you that. Can be. Number 11, time to create a backstory. In my opinion, this is not needed, especially if you are running a level 1 campaign. Level 1 is the backstory. But I've read this part before, and I will say that they do make a point on one part of this that I think is important. D&D gives players an incredible amount of freedom in their role-playing, so new players should give themselves an interesting role to play. Choosing a race, class, and background is important, but thinking about what they mean for an individual helps breathe life into a character. Sketch out this character's upbringing, their core personality traits, impactful events in their lives, and what led them strike out on their adventure. I do agree on the upbringing and what led them to, because like obviously, like, because Gygax even said don't make your character a noble's son, you know what I mean? Because why would he go out? Well, I would say that this probably, like, if his entire, okay, well, now he has a reason. But generally speaking, it's very simple, right? So, like, play a fighter, you're a military guy, so you're probably in for the defense of the kingdom. Playing a magic user, you possess arcane knowledge, but you want to get more knowledge, and there's lost knowledge in these dungeons. But you're also weak, and you need to team up with other people to find this knowledge and uncover these magical trinkets and whatnot. Clerics, your god may have commanded you to go into this tomb for like a pilgrimage or recover a lost artifact of the faith. or maybe like you simply believe in helping others overcome danger, like that's your calling in life, that kind of thing, or simple as bringing back enough money to pay tithes to the church. So there you go. Um, and thieves, that's self-explanatory. You want money. How do you get more money? Go and explore these tombs and lost civilizations and whatnot. So you get more money. Um, Once players do this, it'll be easy to picture how their character reacts to an ogre rushing at them, an NPC telling a lie, or a fellow party member engaging in wild antics. Now, I have quite a bit to say about this one. How do you react to an ogre rushing at you? Well, don't. It's funny to me that a lot of people say don't use the that's just what my character would do excuse, and yet will defend a mindset like this. How do you handle an ogre rushing at you? Well, you have three options: fight, run, or trap it. Try to trick it into a trap or something. So in my opinion, that's like those are the only three things you have to. And if your character is stupid enough to let you make the wrong decision, then it's a character that deserves to die. That's just the way I see it. If you play carelessly, then so be it. You reap the benefits of the reward, so to speak, which is you get to make a new character. Yay! And hopefully you learned something. An NPC telling a lie. Okay, well, how do they know that the NPC is telling a lie? For example, my group of Christian men, we played Morgan's Fort tonight, and they happened to find out one of the rumors that they heard in Morgan's Fort was not necessarily true. They traveled down to Brymass into the southern swamps, hearing that there was lizard men that were attacking travelers on the road. Found out that's total bunk. Doesn't exist. But there is an orc problem down there, and a bandit problem, and they need help with that. Both of those things. So, but no insight rolls. I don't do that. I don't play to that. You have to have a good reason to say, no, you're wrong. You can disbelieve them all you want. You could say maybe they're not necessarily telling us the truth, like, because they'll go back to town, like, okay, not necessarily everything we hear is true now. But they're not going to be able to just have this innate ability to tell whether or not somebody's lying. So that's not going to work. Or a fellow party member engaging in wild antics. Excuse me. Thank you. So anyway, that comes about from mostly people at the table reacting. So much less the character itself. So it can also make the game much more rewarding if players are invested in their fictional character. It's natural to want to know what will happen to them, to want to take them on a journey to achieve their goals. True, I'll give you that. Keep the player's handbook nearby. The player handbook is every D&D player's Bible. Here, information can be found on every race, class, background, spell, god, aspect of combat, and more. New players should, in my opinion, that's all setting based, but with the exception of the rules on the races and classes. And I've noticed something that I just now seen. Like they've got anything that relates to race, they've got underlined, and I'm looking forward to the hot garbage of when I click on it, because I think I know how this is going to go. Anyway, new players should take time to read through it in their own time and gain an understanding of the mechanics, particularly ones that pertain to their class. I do agree. Get some free time, read up on it. It'll help. You'll learn something. Keep it handy during sessions as well. Quickly look up spells or items if need be. Yes, please have it by for quick reference. However, in the midst of the game, players might not always be able to find speedy answers by flipping pages, leading into the next point. And the next point should be rulings over rules. It's not, but The game master should be in such a way, the referee should be in such a way that they rule something on the spot that now that needs to be consistent, unless you give a caveat like, hey, I don't know how this is ruled in the book. Next time this comes up, we're going to rule according to the book. But for now, I'm ruling it this way, so it will work for this time and this time only. I will let you know in the future when I consult the book. But ask questions. I'm not sure what the spell's description means. Can't remember what AC or DC stands for. Don't know what it means to be behind cover. Ask. Pausing the game's actions for a few seconds is worth it to help make sure everyone is on the same page and having a good time. More often than not, DMs and other players will be glad to answer questions for who are learning the game, and if they aren't, well, refer to the first point. They might not be the best people to play with. I do agree. Speak up, ask questions, and if it's the GM's job to answer questions. If you're not willing to do that, you don't need to be a GM, and that's because everybody's new at some point. So communicate and speak up. Following on from the previous point, it's important for party members to talk to each other and discuss. In every campaign, situations will arise that requires players to make a choice. If players are new to the game, they shouldn't let that fact keep them from speaking up. Share ideas on how the party might distract the guard or break into that ominous tower. Does the new player's character have a spell that'll teleport and disguise the party and interrupt and let others know? New players have a lot to offer. This kind of strategizing and discussion is especially fun when players stay in character, adding to the atmosphere. I do agree on that point. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to strategize. There are bad ideas, but nobody's going to call you an idiot for simply questioning the idea. That's what constructive criticism is. You ought to be able to give advice and accept the criticism for it. So that comes with being a human being. Number 7, don't take over. While some players might have trouble speaking up, it's also not uncommon for some newcomers to try and center themselves at the table. Remember that D&D is a collaborative effort. Working together is the most important aspect of the game. Every party member deserves a voice, so don't drown the others out. New players should feel free to share their ideas and roleplay their hearts out, but make sure everyone else gets to do so as well. Approach every situation as a team, whether it's a horde of giants or a dark maze of underground tunnels. I do agree with this point. Some people are more naturally inclined to be more outgoing than others. Some people are more inclined to be reserved, more private. They don't want to be necessarily the center of attention. They want to be noticed, but not too noticed. You know what I mean? And so normally what I do at the table is you're being a little ruffian tonight. You're being a little hoodlum, and you're about to be squished. I'm going to squish you. Ugh. Squished. But anyways, so if somebody's not speaking up at the table, like I'll just kind of like, what do you like? I'll ask, what do you think? What are you doing? What blah 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 blah. Try to involve them, you know. And so I believe it's it's the game master's job to get people involved. If people are starting to not collaborate, you know what I mean. So take notes. A lot can happen in one session, and after a week or 2 or 3, depending on how busy players' lives are, as passed in real time, it might be hard to remember everything that transpired in the session before. So make notes of important plot points, especially ones that were relevant to one's own character, to avoid feeling lost once everyone rejoins to play again. The player sheet has plenty of space for note-taking, and if it runs out of room, feel free to attach more paper. In addition to making plot notes, it can also help new players to make notes on certain mechanics. If a player finds themselves forgetting that they have to reload a certain blah 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 blah. Anyway, yeah, I agree with that too. You should take notes. Now, do it shorthanded and only write down the important, relevant stuff. You can write down names and this, that, and everything else. Generally, I take notes to help remind my players. So that, you know, because they might miss 1 or 2 things. in the speech, like, oh, they forgot this guy's name or whatever. Okay, but normally somebody else will remember it, but I try not to leave them hanging because they will get hung up on trying to remember this dude's name, and will spend a long time trying to remember if I don't interject it. Expect the unexpected. I'm skipping over because that should be it. Embrace every role, even critical fails. Uh, like it happens. You roll dice, and that's the nature of the game. Randomness, chaos. So know that the rules are more like guidelines, and I disagree with this. This is a little different for every group of gamers, as some adhere to the rules more strictly than others, but for more casual campaigns like ones the first timers usually join, rules are a little more flexible. Among groups of friends, enjoying the journey is often more important than the letter of D&D law. But, okay, I've seen a lot of people who have thrown D&D law out the window because there was a favorite character, whereas the rules magically come back in whenever somebody else tries to do the same thing. It's like, okay, this guy gets to have 5 attacks in one round, but I can't. I can't drink a potion and fight at the same time. Like, that's just stupid. Uh, it like makes no logical sense why this one character can make 5 attacks in one round while somebody is like having to waste 2 actions to stand up and then fight. Like, it's nonsense. Uh, the rules are there so that it keeps everybody in line. Everything is fair. Nobody can say you're playing favorites. It's not a guideline. It is rules. They are there for a reason. You have to have this kind of verisimilitude. If you don't have it, then I don't know what your game is going to fall apart. A DM might decide she is good. What are you talking about? Look at that heart. Look at the heart. Look at the heart. It's cool. Is it so cool? Okay. Oh no. Heidi under the blankie. Anyway. Oh god, she's gonna go all the way up. A DM might decide to give a player advantage or disadvantage on a given roll if it makes sense for a player's character. That's more of a modern thing. Certain situations might not be covered in the rule books, and DMs and players must discuss how characters are affected. Nope, disagree. Game Master makes a ruling, and that is law. No discussion needed. Aside from, hey, I don't know how this is going to work this time, so I'm going to rule it this way, and I'll consult the book later, and then we'll try to run it like that from now on. But if there is no rule, then the Game Master's rule is law. Whether you like that or not, no discussion needed. You simply let them know what the ruling is, and they have to accept it. Stick with it and have fun. So, that's really all okay. It's kind of a weirdo.
You're a weirdo.
Anyway. So it's kind of a weirdo way to like end a list like that, because they're like kind of do nothing, say nothing kind of entries. How about you draw your picture?
Don't involve her actually being good.
So, but anyway, guys, go and get off here. Oh no.
Get up here.
Take care. God bless. See you on the other side, fellas. No, you don't get to.